button you can press.
That's right. If anyone that's joined in from the public would like to make any comments, just click on the raise hand button and I'll ask you to unmute yourself. It does not look like there's anyone that has any comments.
Okay, very good. Well, then we will move on to the first item on the agenda, which tonight we have moved up to the top, as we mentioned last time, the Raleigh Youth Council members. If they have joined us, they can go ahead and give their reports.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? I'm just going to introduce the two council members that are here tonight because they're brand new. And just a reminder that we are rotating through our executive board of councils members. So tonight we have Genesis Parham. She attends North Carolina Wake College and Career Academy. Some of her accomplishments include the A honor roll throughout her high school career, being president of the Student Government Association, National Honor Society, and being the softball team captain. Genesis is currently serving as our secretary. And in addition to Genesis is Jackson, and he attends Roseville High School, where he is a senior class president, president of the Science National Honor Society, president of the National Technical Honor Society, co-founder of two organizations, North Carolina Governor's School nominee Eagle Scout candidate, a recipient of the senatorial nomination by Senator Burr to the United States Military Academy of West Point. And Jackson is currently serving as our Youth Council Recreation Chair. So these guys are just going to give you an update on what we've been up to.
Hey guys, so I'm Genesis, and what we've been doing recently is doing a lot of park cleanups. So our next park cleanup is Saturday at Marsh Creek. And with this, we've also done a lot of invasive species removal with the city of Raleigh. So our council is loving these and loving participating in them, and it's become really popular over this time of COVID. We saw that the Greenway Advisory Board is doing a park cleanup at, I think, Walnut Wetland Center. And so hopefully when restrictions are lifted, we love to participate with you guys, and we love doing these. So if you ever want to extend an invite to us, we send out opportunities through mine for the teens to volunteer. So we'd love to participate if you just let us know. We're all over the city, not just Raleigh. We have a spring leadership conference coming up, and we will have the opportunity to highlight some of our accomplishments individually and as RYC. So hopefully we can win some of the awards.
Hi everyone, like Carmen said, my name is Jackson Smith. And so some upcoming meetings that we have, I believe in our April meeting, we're having Councilman Branch come in and speak to us about public speaking, because in the upcoming months, we're having our council elections for new board positions. So that should be really interesting and informative. And I remember a couple weeks ago, we had Miss Christina Jones come by and basically ask for our input on a couple of things. So, I mean, I'm just extending an invitation to anyone out there who is looking for any sort of teen input on whatever it may be, that we'd be more than helpful, more than willing to, provide that insight.
Very good. Thank you both for your reports. Does anyone in the board have any questions? Oh, I see Christina with her hand raised. Go ahead.
Hey, I wanted to say thank you guys for having me. I had an amazing time at your board meeting. I think I took up too much time because I don't know how to stop talking. So thank you for bearing with me on that. I did set up my Instagram account like you asked me to, and I've lost myself. So I knew I was going to talk to you tonight. So I need some help from you guys because I don't know anything about Instagram. So I'll be sending you a message so you can help me further. But thank you. Nice to see you here.
That's great. Christina, what were you talking with them about? Was it about the BPAC, or was
no,
it
was actually
else?
about Raleigh Citizens Advisory Council and how we can connect with younger people who are interested. And I was really proud, and it's awesome to see them come to our meeting. So I wanted to see how we can make that connection. And they gave me the advice to set up, because I'm only on Facebook, and I've learned that that's for old people. And so I need to get onto different platforms, and they said set up an Instagram account. And I was like, how hard is that going to be? And it's much harder than I thought. So I'm gonna need your help again. So I'll send you guys a message soon. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Not at this time. Okay, so you guys are welcome to stay as long as you can and would like to. And then if you need to roll off, feel free to do so. Okay, thanks so much for coming. All right, next on the agenda, I have something that's a little bit sad to do, but it's the presentation of plaques to Dexter and Chris Dillon, who I think you guys actually are going to stay a little bit longer because I don't think we actually have replacements for you yet. So we'll give you a plaque, but you still have to stay with us a little bit. I hope you're both able to do that. I'm not sure I saw Chris join, but I did see Dexter joined. Are you on here? There's Dexter. Okay, great. So thank you so much for your service over the past years. You've been a wonderful, yeah, everybody turn off your mic so we can hear you clapping. Been
Thank you,
wonderful.
guys. Appreciate you, Rube.
Yeah.
Really
Absolutely.
awesome team.
Y'all have been great. Thank you
There's
so much
Dexter.
for your guidance.
Yes, thank you for reminding us to keep our eye on equity
Mhm.
and to, just really think about the entire park system from that point of view. Much appreciated. And Chris Dillon, I don't see here, but he has also been just a real steady force on the Parks Board over the years. And you both have been great mentors to me. You were on the board before I was, and I really look to you both for your guidance. So I'll greatly miss you, but I'm glad you're here for a little bit longer.
Thank you, guys. I enjoy serving alongside
Close the
you,
door, please.
and look forward to connecting at some point in the future. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Giovanna, I think you have actual plaques, right?
Yes, I do. So the plaque,
Oh,
Those are nice.
oh, they're beautiful. So the plaque reads, with great appreciation for your service and commitment to the Raleigh Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board, 2021.
right. And those will be.
So I'll get this to you. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, man, it's been a long time. I took Johnny Tillet's seat. I don't know how many of you guys know Johnny Tillett, but yeah, it's been a long time. So thank you, guys.
Thank
What are
you,
you gonna do
Dexter
with
and
all your
Chris.
free? Sorry, go ahead, Oscar.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Dexter and Chris. I know I haven't been able to spend as much time since I came on board with you all, but y'all are leaving a lasting legacy of service, and I really appreciate everything you all do for not only for this board but for the community as a whole. So thank you.
No problem. However, I can continue to support you, Oscar. I'm here, brother. So know that.
All right. Well, I know where to find you.
All right.
Well, thank you both. Well, next on the agenda is a presentation on the Raleigh ADA transition plan by Billy Jackson. I'll turn it over to you.
Yes. Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Billy Jackson. I'm the Assistant Director of Engineering Services. It is good to be back in front of the board. I was actually a Parks member on the Parks team for 18 years. So it's great to be back with you guys. I spent many nights at JC Park with you guys in these type of meetings. So tonight, what we're going to be looking at is the ADA transition plan update. In 2017, Engineering Services was asked to take a look at our transition plan and do an update on it. What we did is we put together a multi-departmental team to review this plan and do the update. And at the end of the project, we actually turned over the new transition plan to Sharon Banks, who is our ADA coordinator. Tonight I have with me, I've got Jimmy Waters, who is the Integrated Facility Services Division Head. He will be presenting tonight and talking about some of the projects that we have within Engineering Services and what we're doing with ADA. Also I have Echo, and I'm going to say it wrong, Swansea. I want to call her by her maiden name because she's just been married in the last year or so. So anyway, Echo was our senior project engineer on this project. She was the lead that coordinated with everyone, did a great job. It was a great update, and we had a tremendous response from city staff as we did this transition plan update. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Echo. I think she's going to lead off with the presentation. This is actually a presentation we did some time back, and she's going to update it a little bit, and then Jimmy's going to talk about some of the projects. Engineering services plays a key part before they start in working with parks, recreation, cultural resources on projects, whether it's maintenance related projects, new construction. And so we do some of our projects Jimmy will talk about. He'll also talk about some of the things we do with parks also. So with that, Echo.
Thank you, Billy, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us and allowing us to present to you this afternoon. Giovanna, I do have to ask, would you like me to share my screen for the presentation? Yes, perfect. Okay, bear with me while I share my screen, please. I think I might need to request control to do that.
You should be able to just hit the share screen button at the bottom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Give me one moment here. There we are. Okay. Let's see. How are we doing? Can we see, everybody see that? Excellent. All right. So as Billy mentioned, the engineering services team was tasked with partnering with Ms. Sharon Banks, the City of Raleigh ADA coordinator, to update our original 1993 ADA transition plan. So Ms. Sharon Banks, she spearheaded this original monthly meetings, which were a cross-departmental effort. You can see here the list of departments that attended monthly meetings. And through that process of monthly meetings, the engineering services team was able to provide all of our departments and our stakeholders with updates on progress for the plan, as well as receive feedback and questions and things like that from our partners within the city. So we started at this process through a lot of research. We looked at a lot of other municipalities, what they were doing, how they had updated their plans, and we found out that we were kind of the front one. The City of Raleigh were kind of the front runners in this update. So we reached out for some assistance. We put out an RFP and we hired this team, Altura Solutions, who they are accessibility consultants. They specialize in ADA transition plans, and they assisted us in updating our plan. So the city had 3 requirements. We had to update our plan. We had to perform self-evaluations of our built environment, our occupied facilities, and we had to engage the public for public information. So Altura Solutions put together, along with the engineering services team and Ms. Sharon Banks, we put together a public open house where we invited members of the public and we asked several questions to have a better understanding of what the priorities were for the public and so that we could incorporate those priorities into our new transition plan. Some of the questions are here that we asked the public, and I'm just going to read those for us. Some of our examples were in regards to accessibility. What types of facilities are important to you? Please rank each from 1 to 5, 1 being your highest priority, 5 being the lowest priority. You can see the public responses that we received were that municipal facilities, parks and recreation facilities, and major venues were among the top priorities for accessibility to our citizens. One of the other questions was, what elements of a building do you feel should be a priority to make more accessible? So we're kind of drilling down here, not the facility type, but what within those facilities were important to them. You can see here the front runners were entrances, restrooms, and accessible routes. And that was specifically from the parking area. One last example was parks provides opportunities for people to socialize, exercise, and enjoy the environment. What park features do you feel are a priority to make accessible? Please rank from 1 to 8. Again, 1 being highest, 8 being lowest. Again, our front runners here were routes and trails, restrooms, accessible parking. That's what was really important for our public input. These were the highest priorities to make accessible through our transition plan. So those were incorporated into our transition plan, but it wasn't just the public we asked information from. We also held staff open houses. Again, this was a cross-departmental effort. Many people, I think, Billy, we had maybe 75, 80 people that attended these meetings. And we asked some of our city staff similar questions, same things. What priorities are important to you? And here's some of the responses we received. Specific to buildings, what building elements are a priority to make accessible? What's interesting is our staff noted very similar priorities. Here you can see accessible parking, accessible routes, and accessible entrances. Top priorities. What park features are a priority to make accessible? Again, we saw accessible parking, accessible routes and trails, and then again, restrooms. So, it was interesting to us to have the public and staff come together at different times, but note very similar priorities as to what needed to be more accessible to them. So this was something that we implemented in our transition plan. And we today are in the process, as Billy said, of carrying out that plan. This was our schedule. We hired Altura Solutions in November. We received council approval to proceed with the updated plan. And then, as Billy mentioned, we physically handed our copies of our updated plan to all of our departments between January and February of 2019. So I know that Mr. Jimmy Walters is going to share some project information with you. But before we go there, I want to share this video. And this is a video that our vendor, Altura Solutions, they created for us. They were from Austin, Texas. Again, their specialty is accessible transition plans. So they reached out to other municipalities who had already gone through this effort. And this video was a word of encouragement to the city of Raleigh.
Hey, Echo, the sound's not coming through.
Not hearing that.
Yes, bear with me one moment.
Okay. I always have problems with that myself.
Yeah, let me get it back here. And here we go.
Originally, the concerns that I had to do with what may be the increase in workload as we went through the plan. That was one of the pieces that we were uncertain about from the parks perspective and from the facilities perspective. We were extremely nervous, somewhat apprehensive.
There was always concern about the legal liabilities associated with researching where, the city's infrastructure was not compliant. For the most part, in 2016, when we updated the plan, there was, widespread support internally, although still a little bit of fear about, documenting all the locations that were currently non-compliant. We knew there was lots of them.
I think the biggest concern was what the change to the development code or development requirements might be. And I would say the second biggest concern was, does it open the city up to liability based on what its existing conditions are? And how much money required to bring the city up to compliance?
I think our biggest concerns were we have so many situations before even ADA was started that how are we going to meet those demands that were going to be placed on us from knowing exactly what we needed in our park system. Fear that we had was, were we going to be able to afford it, and how were we going to actually accomplish what we knew we were going to find? I think there was some concerns from all around, from the executive team on down, over how was the public going to accept us, and were they going to believe that we're doing this for the right reasons?
I think originally.
There we go. So as I mentioned, the three things we had to do, right? Update our transition plan, have public input, and our self-evaluations of our built facilities. So these are some of the same apprehensions that we had as a city, right? How are we going to take on this massive project? And we did it, and we did it together, and we did it cross-departmentally. Those self-evaluations, the city staff performed themselves. We used the 2010 accessible standards for design, and we went out to all of our more than 200 facilities. And we actually went through a checklist, and we noted where we had barriers, and we provided that information to Altura Solutions so that they could incorporate that into our transition plan. And through that process, we were able to establish where our barriers are located, how we can potential solutions for resolving those barriers, and associated costs that could help us get there. So that's how we get to where we are today with actually implementing these projects. And with that, I will pass it on to Mr. Jimmy Walters.
Echo, thank you very much. I think I've watched that presentation a handful of times, but it still blows me away the amount of workload it took to pull all that together as a city. And I think it just goes to show the support that the administration has to put the city in the right direction when it comes to ADA and compliance. So, thanks for having us on this evening. My portion of the ADA transition plan is to implement it for the engineering services department. So as Echo stated and Billy did as well, their divisions are responsible for their own areas. And so for us, we've taken the challenge on. Back once the plan was given to us, we started with a capital outlay program. We've obtained funding in the past budget year. And since that, we have made some headway as far as working with our communications department and developing our website and some of the tools that we use to reach out to citizens. So we had some interdepartmental workings there to get that developed. We're also working with our HR department and communications as far as working with educating our staff in part of our onboarding. So you as a new employee to the citizen, part of your onboarding experience will be some training in the ADA so that everybody has a small part in the success of implementing this program for the city. So so those are some of the things that we were able to tackle quickly. As far as a mechanical and structural component, we've also started working with a design firm, and we're starting for our locations in the downtown vicinity. So the Raleigh Municipal Building, One Exchange Tower, and also at our Dillon Building. So we actually just completed our bid for that, and we are looking to hopefully start construction in some of our remedies for some of our deficiencies. So we should hopefully start making some progress in those areas in the next few months. As we talked about earlier, we also do partner with parks. So with parks, they develop programs themselves, and sometimes they reach out for us for support. So so that's kind of in the actual project implementation component. One representative within our group that wasn't able to be here tonight is our facility and operations group. And so those are the guys that are taking care of the maintenance and repair things that pop up on a daily basis. So part of that education and part of having this plan is we've ingrained that also into our maintenance staff. So when they run into a repair, they know that we need to be looking at how can we improve this to make it ADA compliant. So they're very, very small pieces, but if you put enough of them together, they start making some bigger strides. So for us, it's a multi-pronged challenge, and we're trying to tackle it one day at a time. So hopefully covered all our bases there.
Yeah. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Echo. With that, are there any questions from anyone about the city's transition plan and where we're at, we'll try to answer them the best we can. And so we just want to open it up for questions.
I have a couple initial questions, and Beverly, I see your hand up as well. This is an update to the ADA transition plan. When was the original one done?
I believe Echo was at 93, 92.
1993.
Wow.
1993.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I'm sure
so
there was a lot of new stuff in there.
Yeah, we went from about a 3 or 4 page report to massive binders of recommendations.
Yeah. And generally, where does the funding come for making these upgrades, especially in parks, you know, the area we're most interested in?
Yes, so what it is, each department's, as part of the plan, it's the department's responsibility to incorporate that into their capital programming and or their bond requests and things like that. One thing that I can say about Parks and Recreation Cultural Resources is that even before we did this update, every time we do a project, every time we look at something, we incorporate upgrades into the facilities to improve ADA. So even before this update, when we did new facilities and or major renovations, that was part of what we would incorporate into it. That's still the case now. As Parks and Rec Cultural Resources plans their capital program, ADA is part of that planning process.
Thanks. Yep. And I believe we had some in our bond recommendations, right, Stephen and Oscar?
Yes. Yes, we did.
Great. Thank you. Beverly, go ahead.
Well, my question was, how do you prioritize the binders full of recommendations? And I guess maybe this is a Parks and Rec staff or you all. I mean, do you go for the low-hanging fruit and do that systemically across the system, or do you do park by park? And how do you look at establishing priorities?
So I'll take a stab and then let Scott and others chime in. So one of the key reasons we wanted it to be decentralized and put back on every department to be their key responsibility to carry out this plan is that Engineering Services is working on ADA, Transportation is working on ADA, Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resource. So every department in the city that has a responsibility with this program, it is their core mission to incorporate that. So from a city perspective, we got multiple departments working on this transition plan. From a Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources, one of my responsibilities is dealing with your facilities on a daily basis and to assist with capital planning. And so every time we look at an upgrade, ADA is a topic of conversation. Whether it's a Greenway trail, whether it's a playground. Many years ago, I was in charge of all the playgrounds. And so that was a key consideration. So every time anything is done, that is a part of the conversation. And so that's how we've tackled it thus far in Parks and Rec. And I think we've done a good job. We've made headway. We've still got a long ways to go with that. Scott, this is an area that he has a lot of expertise in too. So Scott, is that a good approach of how we've done it? You've been here quite a while like I have, and didn't know if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, Billy, thank you. You know, we look at all of our projects during our CIP process. And to Billy's point, as Stephen and his team kind of corral us into that lens of ADA is also there. So we're looking every time that we're doing work, we try to incorporate some aspect of that ADA plan where we can as we go through the process.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. It's required. So it's not, I would say we look at it with a lens, but it's a function of every building, trail, and facility we touch. Before we make it look nice, we address compliance with ADA. And sometimes those costs, we have to address those before we can enhance the facility for a user experience. It's like the core function of what we're trying to do. And Billy knows this, and Scott, and our facilities average age are 30 years. So a lot of our buildings the last 20 years were way out of compliance, but through a lot of effort by our facilities team and Shawshin's project managers, every time we touch one, it's a bathroom, a doorway, something gets tweaked to bring it up to compliance.
Yeah, if I may, just as Stephen said, the North Carolina Building Code incorporates accessible requirements. So every time you upgrade a facility, anytime you touch it, the building code specifies. But to your question about priorities, as I mentioned, part of the requirement of the transition plan was public input. So we utilize that public input to note our priorities with the transition plan also. So those certainly were incorporated into the plan's schedule.
Thank you all for that comprehensive answer. Any other questions from the board or comments? All right, great. Seeing none, we'll move on, but thank you all very much for that presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is an update on the Greenway Master Plan. Chris Nickfar is here with us.
Yes, thank you,
Chris.
Jennifer. The last update that I provided to Parks Board, I think, was at the end of last summer, and there has been a tremendous amount of work done on the plan update since. So we're very excited to provide an update to you this evening. On the meeting, we have 2 members of our consultant team with Tool Design, Jared Draper and Ashley Schultz, and they will be leading the presentation tonight. So I will turn it over to them.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris. Good to see everyone. Hope you're all having a great night. It's nice that we didn't get the storms that we thought we were going to get. As I pull up my screen, we'll just make sure that everybody can see. Can everybody see that? Good to go?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, speaking of plans that have been, that are in the process of being updated, and it's been a while, the Greenway, the Capital Area Greenway Master Plan was last updated in 1989. So this is another great opportunity back to back with the ADA transition plan. But I think this is a good opportunity, and we're excited to be here tonight. One of the things before I get started, I just wanted to say we are very excited to be working on this project as Tool Design, partially because we live here. This is our community, and being able to work on a project in your own community that has such a great impact is so important. We think that this project has, we've seen 3 huge themes through the process. One is that we want to build on a lot of work that has already been done. Next, we understand there's a lot of work still to do. And that goes to not only, creating upgrades to our existing system, but also looking for what's next and expanding. And then finally, due to everything that has happened in the last year, we have been flexible and we are continuing to find the right path forward. We do not feel that we have been stuck in any one kind of direction, but we've tried to be nimble through this process, and we will continue to be until it's finished so that we can get the best product for our community. So with that, Ashley and I are going to kind of walk us through what's been going on and what has been accomplished thus far. Here's a little bit of history. You probably all know this, but this is part of that work that we're building on. Is the Capital Area Greenway was really kind of set in motion in the mid to late 70s, and starting with the plan and the vision for 77 miles of Greenway, and then in 1986 growing to 228, and now the last update in 1989, 270 miles. It's great to report that the city of Raleigh has over 117 miles of completed Greenway in our system. It's robust, it's great, people love it. No matter what someone's going to tell you about the system, they usually start with the fact that they enjoy it and that they're so glad that it's an amenity within this community that they live. This process has, like I said, has taken some turns. We kicked off in January of 2020, which seems like it was forever ago. But during that time, we originally had a lot of things planned, a lot of in-person events, going across the city to, to really engage different parts of the community, meet people where they were, rather than have them just come to us. And when COVID and the pandemic hit, a lot of those things came to a screeching halt. And so we've been trying to still engage, and you'll see some of those efforts through this work. We have been guided by a fantastic steering committee. We have 23 members of the steering committee, as well as 18 members of a design review team that have been meeting periodically at milestones throughout this project. They really are the sounding board for any of the process or the procedure that we're going through. And it's been some of their words and their input that has really helped us shape the next steps as we walk through this process. So where we are today, like I said, we had planned on a lot of in-person things, and we've shifted to virtual. And so we don't think that that shift has caused us, too much in a way of like engaging people, because we've just been able to do it in different ways, and we are continually trying to figure out how to do it better. But you'll see tonight, we've already talked about, and I think that Chris presented originally to you, about the review of existing plans, looking at your existing conditions, and kind of where we are now is we are getting ready to prioritize projects, to think through a more comprehensive list of project recommendations and how the strategies that we're going to use to implement them. We're going to be looking at recommendations on funding and how to move projects forward. And when I say projects, I don't just mean new trails. It also could be renovation or enhancing existing trails. And then all of that is going to be wrapped into a draft report that is going to be taken back out to the public, as well as to you, all of you, and then a final report later this year. And so we'll walk through a few of these things. We'll try to keep it fairly quick so we can answer questions and keep things moving. But one of the first things we did was understand where we've been and what the efforts that have been already accomplished. Not only the older Greenway master plan documents, but 28 plans and documents that the city has adopted were reviewed. We really wanted to understand what are the things in these plans that are going to affect the Greenway? What are key opportunities? What are challenges that may exist? And so that was really a foundational for any of the work that we were doing next. And so I'm going to turn it over to Ashley. She's going to walk us through a few other items. And Ashley, just let me know when I need to advance slides.
Sounds great. So after we did the review of the previous plans, we kind of assessed the existing conditions of the system. So we have to understand the state of the system, what it feels like to walk, bike, wheel to a Greenway, as well as the experience of traveling along the Greenway network to figure out what are the best next steps for the city's Greenway system. As you can see on the bullet points, there were a lot of elements that we looked at during this analysis. We looked at gaining an understanding of what the existing trail network is. So how wide are trails? What is the trail surface? Where are they located? Where do they go? As well as how many people are currently using the trails and at what days and times of the year. I know Chris has done a lot of presentations about the utilization counters in the past. We also looked at how trail access points are connected to existing sidewalk, bikeway, and transit systems. So as you can imagine, many of the trails that are in and near downtown Raleigh have greater access to all of those networks than those that are a little further out. We also looked at where trails cross streets at grade and what are the characteristics of the roadways that intersect with the trails, such as their speed limit, how many numbers of travel lanes they are, what is the comfort level of making that crossing. We also looked at where wayfinding exists in the system and where it does not, what types of trail slopes there are across the system and what the impacts are of the slopes on accessibility. Locations of trail amenities like benches, comfort stations, water fountains, public art, etc., and bicycle parking and bicycle repair stations. And lastly, we looked at more operational pieces, how the Greenway system is funded, what are operating hours, and other sort of policies that impact the user experience, as well as its impact on environmental conservation. Next slide, please, Jared. Another aspect of the process that we've been doing throughout the past year and a few months is community engagement. We've done a lot of different types of community engagement and have gotten a lot of really detailed feedback, which is great. We feel like hearing from the community is really important because it allows us to understand their needs beyond the analysis that we did of the existing conditions and what we read in the previous plans review of previous plans. So as you can see, we have done and are continuing to do a variety of engagement strategies. We have that wonderful steering committee that Jared talked about. We have done 2 online surveys, but the first one was more robust and focused on listening and hearing from the community about all of their thoughts and opinions about the Greenway system. We conducted 14 focus groups with community organizations and leaders, as well as city staff and neighboring community partners. We were able to table at 1 in-person event before COVID, and that was very fun. Yeah, it does feel like a long time ago. And we also did direct outreach to a host of community organizations, over 40 different groups. And this was not something that we had exactly planned at the beginning, but of course, COVID has undoubtedly had an impact on all of our lives, including this project. And, reaching out to community organizations was a result of us being flexible in that process and trying to figure out how we can still make sure we're engaging people and pushing it forward and making opportunities to engage as accessible as possible. So that's something that we'll continue to do throughout the rest of the plan. Okay, so the most recent thing that we've been working on is developing prioritization criteria. These criteria help us develop priorities and understand how trail projects, whether it's a new trail or trail renovation or enhancement, compare to one another. And it's important to note that when we're identifying projects that are higher priority, they are a high priority, or the intention of the criteria is to identify projects that are high priority because they will bring really tangible benefits to the system and impact its accessibility and how equitable the system is. So we developed the criteria using a combination of existing criteria that is used for the Parks Bond, as well as looking at best practices across the country and the state of North Carolina. We kept a lot of the criteria from the Parks Bond because we thought that they were good and made sense and were strong. And we also wanted to ensure that we're carrying forward the work that has been done in the past, and that those criteria were used for a purpose and a reason and made sense for Raleigh. So we felt like we should move them forward. We also added criteria from a review of trail networks across the country, especially since we wanted these criteria to be very Greenway specific. And so, it's a combination of doing what's been done already, but also preparing the city to address the changes that have occurred since the last plan. Next slide, please. So this is a list of all the criteria that we're assessing. Jared's going to take a deeper dive into each one, so I'm just going to quickly go through them, but they are Greenway access, equity, public input we received on trails that should have some reinvestment, as well as new connections that people want to see where trails don't exist today. Whether a trail is already in an adopted plan, future density, the transit system and its connection to those trail projects, the level of service for the park system, as well as the sidewalk and bikeway networks. Next slide. Okay. So last thing that I'll highlight before I pass it back to Jared is that not all of the criteria have the same weight, or in other words, some criteria can contribute more points to a trail project's overall score than others. And as you can see on this slide, Greenway access and equity have the highest scores. So they'll have the most weight in what a project's final score is. And also some of the criteria that are listed are related, like Greenway access and equity. And that allows us to have even more of an emphasis on equitable trail development in areas of the city that haven't historically had Greenway trails, and also equitable investment in existing trails. All right, Jared, it's all you.
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, I think that it's really important for us to think about priority projects and being able to stand behind and support those projects. I say often that if you have a priority project and you can't talk about what that project accomplishes for your system, for your community, that the benefit that it adds, then why is it priority? And so that's what's so great about some of these criteria, is that they do relate to one another, so that they really can push us toward the reason why we want to invest in trails that are the highest priority. So first, Greenway access. We used, again, the work that the Parks Department has already done, and I think that they've done a great job with their level of service model. One of the components that they looked at was Greenway access, and making sure that they looked across the city to see what places had basically comparable access to one another. And so we used that same criteria and ranked those locations, those census blocks that had the least amount of access, the highest, hoping that those gained points will identify trail projects to create new access. In a similar way, equity is looking at vulnerable communities across the city, and understanding that those, if there's specific areas of our city where there are a higher concentration or higher density of vulnerable populations, identified by these factors here on the screen: unemployment, poverty rate, age dependency, educational attainment, housing vacancy, that we want to score those places higher, because we think that not only is that an equity component, but also providing a trail, it's one piece of a larger system. And I think that that's where you'll see some of these other criteria fall in. The public input trail reinvestment, I think that this has been a really fun exercise. Like Ashley mentioned, we had over 4,000 participants in our first survey. And so you can imagine the number of comments that we got to read through. And I think it was really important for us to see and look at the themes of the comments that we received. Understanding that the recommendations that come out of this plan, we want to make sure that someone can see their voice and see their input in the recommendations that are ultimately established and adopted. And so the input for trail reinvestment is focused on the existing trail system and how we can rank those specific places and specific segments higher and lower for reinvestment. In a similar way, and you can see the map on the right, this is actually from our survey with thousands of lines. We started to look at where density of lines started to kind of come together. And you can actually see some of these places where people want connections, and people drew similar lines over and over again. And so this is about new connections. How do we expand the system? Some of these trails would have already been planned in our previous work. Others needed new connections. And so we were looking at those, and then we'll rank those as well based on public comments. Adopted plans, like we mentioned, we reviewed 28, and I think it's even still counting. And we want to make sure that if someone has already done work and mentioned these types of these trails or certain connections, that there's already been planning work, and we're assuming public outreach and connecting with people about why that is in that plan. And so we want to make sure that those voices are carried forward as well. Future density from the comprehensive plan, there are specific places within our community that growth is planned, and we want to think about those places strategically, and how, again, when it comes to equity, when it comes to accessibility, all of these things are kind of carried forward through our criteria. Transit, I mentioned earlier that the Greenway system, 117 plus miles, is a lot of miles. And we know that it's a valuable component, not only to open space conservation, but also to our overall transportation network. And so connections to transit, specifically high frequency transit that exists today, and the future bus rapid transit are going to be key connections that our Greenway system can provide. And so we wanted to make sure it was accounted for here. Second to last, overall park level of service score. This again uses the model that the Parks Department has already been using, thinking about the larger kind of amenity of parks and how people can move not only to those parks, but what services or amenities or experiences those parks have. And so we used a scoring system that was developed by the Parks Department as another metric in the prioritization criteria. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that this is not a standalone system, that if you're going to bike, it's not only about biking, walking, wheeling on the Greenway, it's about getting there from where you live or from the transit station or from that transit stop. And so we wanted to think about the active transportation network that already exists and how it links together as another way to provide points to potential projects. So with that, I'll turn it back to Ashley, and we're close to finishing up, so stay with us.
Yeah, very close. So earlier I mentioned that we had done a second survey, and this is what we are calling our progress survey. It was basically a check-in with the community. We wanted to show them this is the work that we've done. Did we get it right? Does this make sense to you? And if we didn't get it right, what did we get wrong, and how can we improve all of these themes that Jared was talking about through the public engagement for our recommendations development. So this was an additional opportunity for input before we dive into the recommendations. So we made the progress survey live for the steering committee first, and then we made it live for the public. And with the knowledge of COVID and all the impacts of that, we felt like checking in through this survey was really important because it allowed us to give more opportunities for people to engage and really to check us and make sure that our work is reflecting what we've heard. So here are some of our results. We had 232 participants, and we had multiple documents that we shared that summarized what we just went through with you. So we had a document that talked about the previous plans review, a document that summarized existing conditions, one that summarized our public outreach, and one that showed the prioritization criteria. And there were questions associated with each document. So for the existing conditions, about 86% of the people that took the survey agreed that they felt the analysis captured the state of the system. And I would say overwhelmingly, the majority of the comments that we got, whether people agreed or didn't agree with our existing conditions analysis, really expressed a desire for reinvestment in existing trails. There was a very strong emphasis on wanting to see, improvements in some of the aging trail infrastructure because we've been building these trails for such a long time, and we just want the existing ones to be better and better. 74% of the people that took the survey said they believed that the public engagement methods that we used were adequately engaging Raleigh residents. And along with that, we also asked people, what are your ideas? If you disagree that we adequately engage people, how can we do better? And we wanted to ask this because we want to improve our engagement and we want to make sure that we're hearing from as many people as possible. So there were a few different ideas that people put forward, and many of them were things that we had already been doing, but maybe that just means we need to do them more so that they're more people are seeing them and it's a bigger engagement effort. So we're going to be reevaluating how much emphasis we've been putting on different aspects of engagement based on those results. And the last thing is that 88% of people supported the draft prioritization criteria. And most of the comments that we received relating to the prioritization criteria focused on communication to property owners that are adjacent to future trails during trail design and construction. So they really wanted to see and emphasize that that communication is necessary in the future when trails are pursued. Next slide. Okay, so that was not at all the last public engagement opportunity for anyone. We will be putting together another outreach period to review the draft plan in June or July of this year. And over the past year, we've learned a lot of lessons about socially distanced and virtual engagement. And so we're going to bring those forward to this engagement period. We know that virtual meetings are really convenient and we're excited to host some of those. But we also feel that providing materials on demand for people, materials that are available to them at their own convenience, so they don't need to be somewhere, whether in person or virtually, at a certain place or time, is really important, and it allows engagement to be more accessible for a wider variety of audiences. So we are working on creating a video that will provide an overview of the draft plan and will be available during the next engagement period. And we're hoping that that video can also be modified after that engagement period is over and we've refined the plan to reflect what's in the final plan and serve as a lasting resource once the plan is adopted. So that is some exciting opportunities to come. We'll also be at future meetings. We'll have 3 more meetings with our steering committee and 3 more with the Parks Board, and then 2 meetings with the City Council in fall, which is when we're anticipating plan adoption.
All right, to wrap up where we're going next, we're in the recommendations phase right now. We have been looking through comments from that progress survey. We're developing recommendations, looking at prioritizing trails. We're going to be creating a lot of content and thinking about some of the comments that we received about how do we really publicize and make sure that people are aware of that they still have time and there's still opportunity to give their input. We'll obviously be preparing agendas and presentations for a variety of upcoming meetings. And we're excited about the steps that are going to lead us to this fall, when we are going to be coming back to you with a final plan, and then to City Council with the hopes of saying, the 2021 Capital Area Greenways plan really does build upon things that were started in the 70s, but it's a plan for now, and it's a plan for the future of the city of Raleigh. So with that, we are happy to answer some questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see people's faces, but I'm happy to
Thank you all so much. I'd like to just pause for 1 second if we could. Councilman Buffkin has to leave, and I believe he wanted to say a few words before he left. So if you're still here.
I am. Thank you, Chair
Great.
Wagner. I just wanted to come by for, well, a couple of reasons. First and foremost, to thank you all for the service you do to the city and all the work you put in on the Parks Bond, and so many other things like the Greenway System Master Plan. What an exciting project. I enjoyed seeing that, and I look forward to getting that at the City Council this fall. Also, I've been in communication with Chair Wagner more frequently as you all have been wrapping up your work on the bond. So I understood you had a few questions about how I do my role as council liaison and vice versa. So I'll just spend a little time talking about that, and then see if you have any questions about the work we're doing in the area around parks. Let me also say about the bond this year, well, over the last year, I'm really proud of the work y'all did. I think you set a gold standard for community engagement, and that's certainly borne out in the data and all of the work that you did. In 2014, when I was on the board, we didn't have a process, anything like that. So I think we're showing a much higher degree of community engagement and transparency in park planning generally, but particularly around the very important effort of the bond. So thanks again to all of you for your work on that. And by the way, Dexter, we joined the Parks Board, I think the same year. In some ways, it feels like just yesterday. Hard to believe you're wrapping up 6 years, but congratulations on that. I have a similar plaque, and it's something I still carry around. I've been rearranging, so it's probably in a box somewhere around here. But I'm also looking forward to getting back to the Y and seeing you there. So congratulations, Dexter, on your great term and all the good work you've done for the Parks Board. So as for how the board and the council work together, and my role as liaison, we have a couple competing views of guidance there. I serve as the council liaison, somewhat of a limited role, speaking on behalf of council and also carrying information back to council. Whenever you guys want to hear from me, I'm available to you. We also have a city council code of conduct, which suggests that council members should avoid attending advisory board meetings for various reasons. Most importantly is that you all ought to have a chance to make independent recommendations and give your advice as a group to the city council as a group. So we're all learning to work in this new environment. Of course, this is my first term, and I know there's a lot of new faces out there on the Parks Board. So if you have more detailed questions about that, we could certainly talk about it. Looking ahead, of course, there's a lot going on in the city, and specific to parks, you all probably saw, we talked a lot about parks at our retreat this weekend. A lot of focus on equity in parks, and two big decisions coming up to council are your recommendation on the penny for parks and your recommendations on the parks bond. A little more uncertainty about the second one, the parks bond, with our municipal elections having a high likelihood that are going to be put off this year. And we're waiting on the state legislature to take some action there. And hopefully they'll tell us when we can have a bond referendum as well, be it in the springtime for a primary, or in the fall for a general, or something in between. So I don't really know a whole lot more than that about what's going to happen with our municipal elections and our parks bonds. So just hang tight, and we'll all keep working together to make Raleigh a better place to call home. And parks certainly contribute greatly to that. And you all have a key role to play in that. And a big part of that is working with our city staff, which are just the best and continue to improve. So with that, I'd be glad to take any questions. I do have to run in a few minutes, and sorry to the folks that I cut off on the Greenway conversation. You all get back to that, and I'll look forward to getting that report later this year.
Thank you, Mr. Buffkin. I appreciate all the words, and I do want to just say thank you for pushing for and advocating for the Parks Board to be involved in the bond process. As you said, that was a new and unique role that we had. Christina, I saw your hand up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Counselor, for being here tonight. I just had two quick questions. The first one, I understand what you're saying, in that if we have something, we were more than welcome to reach out to you, and that's fantastic. So thank you for that. My first question is, if you guys as district representatives have something you want, not necessarily on the bond, I understand that's kind of murky waters, how do you contact us? Is it just through the chair and coming, or are you, that kind of goes into my second question, which is how often will you attend meetings, or is that not part of the role and you're just here to just explain that to us?
Oh, let me try the second one first. So my preference would, I'll try to be available as I can be. And my preference would be to that we all have the shared expectation that I'll be present when I'm invited, rather than plan for me to attend on a regular basis. And then as for the first one, so I'll split hairs a little bit. If I was a district counselor and I wanted your individual opinion as a board member, I would probably call you or email you. If I wanted advice from the Parks Board on something, I would take that matter to council, and I would get the council's approval to have the board look into it. You do have an annual work plan. The council approves that. That's essentially, as I conceptualize it, that is council's authorization for city resources, such as our staff time and the attention of the Parks Board to be paid to issues. Usually the council does not make changes to work plans, but sometimes the council does. In the past, and I saw this when I was on the Parks Board, there were subjects that the Parks Board proposed discussing, and the council declined to authorize the board's discussion of it. And in the past, I have seen council add items that the board did not ask for. So there is that formal relationship, but outside of that, I don't see any problem with an individual member of council or the mayor contacting an individual member of an advisory board.
Thank you so much. And forgive me, I've only been on the board for 5 months, so I'm just really trying to understand. I think for me, specifically going through the parks bond, since I wasn't involved with it last year, and the reason I brought that up last month to the chair is because I didn't feel that I had enough information of what you guys as individual counselors found that you needed in your district. I knew what the Parks Department wanted. I knew some things that were being asked, but I didn't know how you guys felt. So I was just asking how we can further find more answers out like that. And I appreciate your response. Thank you so much.
Anyone else have any questions for Patrick? Very good. Well, thanks for joining us. It was good to see you.
Yeah, glad to be with you all. And thanks again for all you do for the city.
Thank you. So getting back to our discussion on the Greenway Master Plan update, thank you all for your report. And does anyone have any questions or comments? I'm sure there are plenty. So open up the floor. Beverly, come on. I saw Dave Toms too. Okay.
Well, on the prioritization criteria, the first one was Greenway access. And Greenway access to the Honeycutt Trail, which is brand new and looks like you're at Kiowa Island or something, is very different from Greenway access to Walnut Creek Trail, and which we all know needs lots of maintenance. So did you have a methodology for balancing out that the access was to a trail that needs a lot of work?
So I think that's a really good question. And the goal with Greenway access as a prioritization criteria is to identify where access exists rather than the quality of access that may be out there. Part of this comes down to simple access points. We have a number of those across the city, but there are certain places in our community that actually could get to a trail fairly quickly, but there's not an access point, or maybe there's not a clear route to get there. And so that criteria is really focused on how easy, and in some cases direct, that access is from a geography to a trail. So for example, a trail like Crabtree Creek that may have several access points within a certain geography is going to get a higher or a better access score, and because there's kind of a permeability to that trail. But in our prioritization, we flip that to say that it would get a lower score because you can already have access there. So we're really looking ultimately to what, Beverly, I think to some of your point is those places that either have very limited access to certain trails, those would score higher in this criteria so that we could look for enhancing access and kind of providing more people an opportunity to get on those trails. Does that make sense?
I'm still struggling with how you value access to some place where it's harder to navigate than otherwise. I understand the tip of the thing. I'm sure you're taking it into account.
And it's added in when we talk about the reinvestment score. That's kind of where you're piling on the difficulty to get there. So we're trying to come at it with each one of those kind of data-driven points that is trying to assess the entire trail.
Okay, I just feel like all through Walnut Creek touches a great deal of Southeast Raleigh, but it doesn't provide the same user experience that on all of it. Some of it is fabulous, but on other parts, it's not in as good a shape.
Agree completely. Greenway access would probably not be the criteria that would capture that feel, but it would be one of the components.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dave Toms, did you have a question?
Yeah, and similar to that in the scoring, the new connections score, can you give some more definition on what the difference is between an access, a new connection, and a new segment of Greenway?
Yes. So Greenway access is, again, looking at where existing trail access currently is today. So really thinking about geographies that don't or can't get to existing trails. Part of that reason is because maybe there's not a trail to get to, right? So if there's not a trail, your access score is going to be very low. So we want to elevate that location because they either need a trail or they need new access to a trail. New connections are really based upon a density of public comment that were drawn on kind of key destinations. And we aligned these in two different ways. One, there are a lot of trails that are already planned on the system, and a significant number of people drew lines that corresponded with future trails that were already planned. There were a few occasions that lines were drawn and a great density of lines. Several people commented in the same way to provide a connection between trails that didn't exist or wasn't already planned. And so what we will do is, from a prioritization standpoint, those previously planned trails will get those points for the new connections, but we will also be looking at drawing new connection lines to make sure that we're capturing some of those comments and connecting some of those destinations.
Okay, got it.
And I will just follow up. I think this will be a lot easier once they're prioritized and you can see the map that kind of shows how each of these things, how it comes together. What we were really focused on in the last progress survey was making sure that the criteria got us toward, gave us the direction of how we could say we felt good about priority trails, because we won't have the money to do all of it, but we want to make sure that we know where to start.
Right. Yeah, and that map with the blue lines on it was
the challenging
because some of them were connections, yeah, across the city versus,
absolutely,
connection to a greenway that might be 300 feet long, and it solves all kinds of challenges.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions? Lindsay, Christina, Carol, Marcia, Kendall, Rashawn. just calling out the people I see.
Good, thank you. I see Beverly's got her hand up.
Okay, Beverly.
Faster, Jennifer. I'm good. It was a great presentation.
And the one other question I've got is, I realize that COVID restricted a lot of your outreach, and you made efforts at outreach, but I remember from filling out the second survey that the outreach to diverse communities was not as strong as you would have liked it to have been. And as we're entering a different phase of COVID and outreach, do you think that you might be doing something non-virtual, some kind of public outreach that, with masks and other things and distancing? And I mean, people are out there, and it seems like we can put ourselves in the Zoom hole and miss the opportunity to get really important connections that can only happen on the ground. They're just not, some parts of our community are not going to come to a virtual meeting, period.
What a great question. Thank you for that, Beverly. I don't know if I have the perfect answer for that, but I do think that we started this process by being flexible, and when we recognized that we weren't engaging certain parts of our community, we wanted to be proactive. We started, and Ashley mentioned, we started reaching out to community-based organizations, providing them with everything that they needed with a click of a button, like just hit send, or here's the materials if you want them printed, because we know that there are community-based organizations that are doing face-to-face. And we will continue to build those relationships, and we'll continue to try to track as much progress as we can. We also don't want to burden those organizations. We want to make it easy if they want to help. But I think we said early on, we want to be flexible. And if later in this project, there are opportunities to do that in a safe way, I think we're willing to try to figure it out. So maybe to be determined in some ways.
Yeah, Beverly, I'll help Jared, because a lot of that is going to be what we are allowed to do as a staff, and then what we would provide our consultants, which he's being directed by us, and we're being directed by city council, city manager. Optimistically, I hope so. Even if it's we just go, you do walking tours, and you collect input, during the week or in the evening as the weather is good. But yeah, we're testing some of those out on some other projects where we just do like a walking tour. We cap it at 15 people, and but yeah, I'm optimistic. I hope everybody on this call is too. So, but I'll help Jared out to say we'll only let him do what we are allowed to do.
Fair enough. Anything else for the team on the Greenway Master Plan update? All right, I don't see anything. Thank you guys very much for the update and for all the work that you've been doing. I know I've enjoyed the steering committee meetings. They've been really good and interactive with the way you do the breakout groups with the Zoom. So well done.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you. So next we have Emma Lyles giving us a report on 2 plans, pre-development assessment plans. Emma, over to you.
Thanks. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Please let me know if you cannot see it. Ooh. So the 2 pre-development assessment plans I'm going to cover tonight is at the Thornton Road property and the Pearl Creek property. Here's just kind of an overview of how we do these pre-development assessment plans, or PDAPs, as I will call them for the rest of the presentation. So we start off with a context and site analysis, as well as reaching out to the State Historic Preservation Office and the NC Heritage Program to do some data collection from them. We do a series of site visits with natural resources staff and cultural resources staff, doing inventory, site opportunities and constraints. And then we work on developing that document, and we conduct a preliminary nature preserve assessment, as well as we develop site suitability diagrams and interim management recommendations. Then we bring the document to y'all for review, and then we roll straight into our short-term management as recommended through the interim management. So this usually takes about 3 to 5 years, usually includes, but is not limited to, more monitoring and mapping, invasive species control, and then we do the full-fledged nature preserve criteria evaluation. We then update the document, then go into long-term management. It's usually, includes conservation of plants, animals, their habitats, some continued monitoring as well. And then we update the document at that point. Usually this takes about 5 to 10 years. Some sites stay in that long-term management phase longer, but once we move into site master planning, then a lot of the information that's developed and collected in the PDAP is then used in the situation assessment, which is one of the first steps in master planning a site. So here is a little bit more detail of what's included in each of these reports. I definitely won't cover all of these tonight, but just wanted to give you guys an overview. It's the context analysis, site analysis, the natural resource and cultural resource inventories. We dive a little bit into park access, social equity, and a demographics analysis. And then, yeah, we end the reports with that suitability analysis and the interim management recommendations. So first up, I'm gonna give you guys an overview of our Thornton Road PDAP. So Thornton Road property is at 6100 Thornton Road, northeast corner of Raleigh. It consists of 2 parcels, a northern parcel about 66 acres, southern parcel about 65, totaling 131 acres on the site. We acquired it in 2009. And when we conducted this PDAP, we also included a lot of the adjacent Greenway easements as well. Here are some lovely site pictures. So on site today, we've got an existing Greenway parking lot. The Neuse River Greenway Trail goes through the site. It's right on the Neuse River, so we've got a nice little beach access boat launch. We did find a lot of evidence of illegal dumping and vehicular traffic on site when we were out there. Found a semi-permanent water body in one of the Greenway easements, plenty of wetlands. The NC Heritage Program let us know that on site there's the Neuse River water dog, the Roanoke slab shell, triangle floater, and the eastern lamp mussel. And then we were also lucky enough to host a Wake County BioBlitz at this site to help do some more intensive inventorying of the natural resources on site. And we found an NC state endangered wildflower, the bottomland skullcap. So here is the suitability analysis for the site. It's kind of broken into 3 categories: very limited, limited, and regular development. Some of the areas in very limited development include the Levee Forest, which is a natural heritage element occurrence we found through the NC Heritage Program, the area where we found the endangered wildflower, the steep slopes of the river, the 100-year floodplain. All of these areas we designated as very limited development. The limited development is another habitat is the bottomland forest. There are some sensitive species found in there. The southern border of the site, we have limited development at because the Raleigh Street Plan currently recommends a 2-lane avenue going through there. And so we don't want to do anything there until that gets more finalized. We also have a force main sewer and a lateral sewer running through the site. And so those areas need to still have limited development. And then we also recommend any areas with poorly draining or partially hydric soils be limited development. Here are the interim management recommendations for the site. Short term, more monitoring and mapping, do some invasive species control, get some of that trash and debris out of the site, address some of that unauthorized access that we saw. And Thornton Road also has an open field right next to the parking lot. We're going to maintain that as an early successional habitat. Long-term goals is more ecological monitoring and retention and protection of those documented significant species, and some ecological restoration. So next up, the other site I want to tell you guys about is the Pearl Creek property. It is in the southeast corner of Raleigh. It's only 1 parcel, 155 acres. We acquired it in 2016. This is a pretty major resource for park development in the area. The only public park is within 2 miles is Barwell Road. There's going to be lots of residential development happening nearby and more anticipated for the future because the 540 extension is going to go pretty close to there. Here are some pictures on site. It's a really, really lovely site. Got wetland and some creeks, lots of rock outcrops. Portion of the site we think used to be used for lumber, and so there's lots of old road beds in one part of it. There are some invasive species, and we found unsanctioned uses that vehicular activity as well as some illegal hunting. And we found also not only through the NC Heritage Program, but through some data collection done by some NC State students a few years ago, that there is a threatened species on site called the Leesbrook lamprey. So here's the suitability analysis for the site. In the very limited is going to be that habitat of the Leesbrook lamprey. So it's, you know, a lot of the wetlands and the creeks, streams, several of the habitats, the Piedmont headwater stream forest, Piedmont alluvial forest, and the freshwater forested shrub wetland. We also have a Greenway corridor that runs east to west through the site along the creek. So we also have that as very limited development. Then any steep slopes that were found on site are also very limited. Under just limited, we have the habitat that's the oak hickory forest. There's also a proposed road through this site. And so we recommend that be limited until we figure out the street plan with the transportation department. And again, any poorly draining or partially hydric soils, we also recommend as limited development. And here's the interim management plan for Pearl Creek. It's pretty similar to Thornton Road. Continued monitoring and mapping, invasive species, addressing that unauthorized access, doing habitat protection for the Leesbrook lamprey, and developing a more long-term resource management plan. And then our long-term goals are additional ecological monitoring, documenting those significant species, and some ecological restoration. And then our next steps. So we're hoping to crank out a few of these a year. Hoping to come back to you guys in the summer with a PDAP for Leonard Track, Sunnybrook, and the Highway 50 Beaver Dam property. Hoping to come back in the fall with Pool Road, Watkins Road, and Hodges Mill Road. And then 2022 to Old Williams Road and South Hole Road. And I will stop sharing and answer any questions if you guys have them.
Emma, can I ask a basic question here? What is the difference between the pre-development assessment plan that you're doing and the situation assessment?
So the situation assessment is at the beginning of a master plan.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, okay. So once you're actually getting into design, you do the situation assessment. This is more, you have the property and you're seeing what's going on with the property and what could it do in the future. Okay.
Yeah. I think the situation assessment also deals more with a community engagement plan for the master plan as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone have any questions? Dave? Yeah.
Yeah, on the schedule, I mean, the question we always get is why can't we just build it? When are we going to get a park here? So did I read the schedule right that we've got a 3 to 5 year assessment and then another 5 to 10 time span at the end of that before we start master planning? So either just generalizing, it's 20 years from the time you sign a deed to when you get a master plan and really get towards implementation. Is that like a standard blanket process across the system for new properties?
Well, there's no hard or fast rules. You know, those timelines can be shortened or lengthened just depending on the need in the area for a park, funding, whole loads of different factors.
Yeah, I can help out, Emma, there. Predominantly, the decision to develop a park was based off of the council's decision. So we do present options to them to say, this area is growing real fast. We'd recommend a master plan here. Some of the ones that Emma is doing now are actually like even out of our ETJ, like Watkins Road and so forth. Those are pretty far out. Pearl Road, although we'll acknowledge 540 is coming really quick. But Dave, I think the best answer is that we acquire the properties, we do due diligence, just like any homeowner, and we do in-house environmental analysis and some external. This is just to say, here's what we have, and then we work with Sally's team and Scott's team to say, does something need to be protected, knowing that there's going to be a couple of years before it's developed. But ultimately, time is directed by council and so is dollars. But we provide recommendations when the next park's going to be developed.
Okay, so there's no, if the resources for master planning is there's no prerequisite that the PDAP exists for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, it's really just to understand our property as an owner much more thoroughly, protect which we know, which is important either culturally or ecologically, and then to develop these high-level management plans. Some of it is capping wells, removing fence, cleaning up the trash, putting up signage, putting up markers that we actually own it, preventing ATV use. Because you're right, some might not be developed for 10 years, and we got to have those basic plans in place. Do we go by there monthly? Do we have to go by there weekly? But yeah, if the resources are in place, well, the PDAP becomes a part of the master plan. It's basically your baseline assessment. We're just doing them in-house and saving some money and utilizing our staff skills. So,
Gotcha. Thanks.
Did you mention, Emma, how were these two properties acquired by the Parks Department?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Just curious.
I know the years.
We acquired, well, one actually, the Pearl Road's the most interesting one, is that was negotiated by the Conservation Fund. They came to us and said, we have a contact in this area. It's one of the largest contiguous parcels in the area, negotiated a below market deal. They purchased the property and we bought it from them. It was a really unique partnership. And the other one we flat out purchased ourselves. So it's, yeah.
Okay.
And that with bond money, that's if you're wondering where, like, the funds came from, Parks bond money.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions on the pre-development assessment plans? Okay. Great. Thank you, Emma, for that report. It's great.
Thank you, guys.
Up next, we have Luke Wallenbeck with an update on the Chavis Memorial Park Interpretive Plan. Hello, Luke.
Hey, how are you, Jen?
Good.
Good evening, everybody. Just here to present, or to not present rather, but just to come and follow up on the meeting that happened last month and some of the discussion that we had. I submitted a memo responding to some of the discussion that we had last month. So I'm here to answer any questions about the memo response, about the project in general, and I can give a little update as well. We had our fourth advisory committee meeting last night and presented the exhibit content package. So the text and pictures and stories that are proposed for the exhibit itself, as well as some preliminary design, which we're calling 30%, but it was developed enough that people could get a really good idea of what this exhibit would look like. We had an excellent meeting, really great feedback, and we're teed up to finish the design work and come back to the advisory committee April 7th for another round to review that final design. So I also have Inga Kennedy here. She's on the call and she's one of our consultants on the project. So Inga, if you'd like to say hello, this would be a great time.
Yes, good evening to everyone and thanks for having us again. Good to see you. Again, we are working through a very great process for this community, and I continue to be amazed at the amount of history that this community has been able to maintain, as a lot of African American communities around the country have lost a lot of history. This community has great history that extends a long way back. And what's important to them is that it is memorialized and preserved. There is so much that they have to pick and choose what they want on these concept designs and where it goes and how it's kind of what the trajectory is. But it's a great process, and I commend them for being able to compile it all and to prioritize what's important for this particular exhibit and future exhibits to come. So if you haven't yet seen any of the details, a great place to start would be with the interpretive plan that describes a lot of the history and how the exhibits will kind of emerge within the park. But it's very exciting and it's good to be a part of it. We did have a great meeting last night. Thank you.
Thank you for the update. And I appreciate you both coming back after last month's meeting and the sort of explanation of some of the concerns, and also going back again to the committee to meet another time and sort of the willingness to stretch that process out a bit longer than was originally intended is appreciated. One thing I just want to make sure the board saw with Luke's memo and email was that distinction about the two committees. There was a little confusion there about there being two committees that were reviewing the design, and the distinction there was that one is the always that they have for every project, the internal staff committee, and the other was the actual steering committee. So there weren't two different steering committees. There was a little confusion on that. Anyone have any comments, questions? Hi,
Yeah,
Charlie.
thanks again for going back for the extra effort. Oh, sorry, Charlie, for the interruption. Yeah, just saying thanks. And it looks like the controversial language issues corrected. So
That's
yeah,
right.
Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks for the circling back.
Absolutely.
I've been on mute because I'm not feeling well, but I want to say that I participated in the meeting last night. It was very positive. The images and the text now relates to John Chavis Memorial Park, past to present. So I thank them for going through that process and allowing us to have input, and it looks great. I can hardly wait.
And I was on a couple of emails, and Oscar, I thank you for just, I think it means a lot as a leader for a quick response to people that are concerned. And I appreciate you doing that, following up, and you and I had one or two conversations, and I appreciate you doing that as well as a leader.
And he participated in the meeting last night too.
Yes, and it was a great meeting. You can really feel the excitement around the project, and I mean, I can already see this being a beacon in the night of right up against the center once it's completed. But I do want to thank Inga, Luke, and the rest of the team and the community for staying engaged, moving this forward, and the finish line is getting very close, and it's very exciting.
Very good. Thank you all. And Dr. Love, thank you for coming on and giving us your comments. I hope you feel better soon.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Have a great night. Okay, very good. If there's not any more questions or comments for them, then we'll move on to the next agenda item. Okay. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. I believe there were two in there, the January and February meeting minutes. Any corrections or go ahead and approve either of those or both? Motions to approve.
I move that we accept the minutes of our last meeting.
Very good. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Thank you. So that was last month, February. How about January?
Look, I move that we accept the January minutes. Nobody remembers them on here. I go ahead and move that we accept the January minutes.
Thank you. I hear a second.
I second it.
Thank you, Marcia. All those in favor, say aye and raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any against? Very good. Moving on. Next, we have the director's report. Oscar.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer, and good evening, everyone. To say we've had a busy last couple of weeks would be an understatement. So you all do have a copy of my report, so I just really wanted to kind of touch on some of the highlights. So we did have two big items at our March 2nd City Council meeting. Your chair, Jennifer Wagner, was there to bring the report and recommendation for the PRGAB bond recommendations forward to City Council. And so I did want to say thank you for all the work that you did. Council was very receptive and appreciative of the community engagement, the thoughtful process that you all brought forward on your bond recommendations to them. So, so thank you for that. That same meeting, Emma Lyles presented the Neuse River Blueway Plan to council. It was very well received. Jennifer was there as well for that one to go ahead and give PRGAB's recommendation for approval, and council also was very excited about this project and unanimously approved it as well. So congratulations to everyone for moving that forward, and we're looking forward to that plan coming to fruition in the future. On March the 12th and 13th, City Council held their retreat at the convention center. So Friday, March 12th, Council spent some time talking about the bond program, the park bond program. So at that date, Jennifer kind of basically kicked us off and provided the council a brief presentation and a little bit of overview, going once again over the PRGAB's recommendations and process for the bond input. Then we did have Janet Cowell with the Dix Park Conservancy provide council an update and just some recommendations for phase 1 of the Dix implementation plan. And then I went ahead and closed it up, giving them a little bit more, giving council a little bit more information about the bond program, some of our key themes, recommendations, and then also gave them some 3 different scenarios for them to start kind of considering, so that way they can kind of start putting some ideas and thoughts together moving forward for the bond program. So council was very appreciative of the work that everybody's done. They did provide us some feedback. So we're going to go back and incorporate some of that feedback and kind of start working on some additional scenarios as they requested. So as we heard, they would like 3 scenarios, 150 million, 175 million, and 200 million. And so based on that feedback, we will be going back probably sometime in April and start kind of working with them on trying to put some of those scenarios together. So a lot of more work to do, and we will keep you in the loop as we can as this bond program moves forward. So we'll see how things go. But as it was mentioned earlier, there is a very strong possibility the bond election may be pushed into next spring. So but at least that gives a little bit more time to kind of really fine tune this bond program. And also,
Oscar,
yes.
If I could add on to that, did you mention how much Dix Conservancy ended up asking for essentially?
Well, I think it's somewhere, I think they were really talking about somewhere between 55 to about $62 million.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be various scenarios in there with different funding levels once we provide those scenarios back to council.
Right. So some of the question mark there is if the parks bond will pay for improvements to Lake Wheeler Road. So that's part of what raises that cost in that area.
Yes, and so there's still going to be a lot of coordination with Transportation Department and also some additional work on council to see if they can maybe leverage some other funding mechanisms to kind of help with Lake Wheeler Road, because ultimately if the park was there or not there, there's still a council interest in getting that road done because it does need some improvements for the community that lives in that area. So thank you for pointing that out, Jennifer. And then also oh yes,
yeah,
Dave, go ahead.
They want, I'm getting sucked into the details, but they want the park to pay for the entire Lake Wheeler improvement.
My understanding, yeah, Dix Conservancy just wants the road to be improved, and they don't care how it's paid for. And yeah, as far as the entirety, yeah, Oscar or Stephen could probably speak to that better.
It's really just a section, I think, from Saunders to, is it Centennial?
Maywood.
Well, yeah, the length, but they want to do the full section. They want the park to be responsible and the park's bond to be responsible to rebuild that road for the full right-of-way width, whatever that comes out to be, and not transportation.
Who do you mean by they? The Dix Conservancy wants the improvements to happen, but they agree that it's probably, I mean, I think we all agree that it doesn't necessarily need to be on the parks bond, but
Yeah,
the issue is that transportation doesn't have it in their budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the question. Does the parks bond need to pay for the full right-of-way improvement?
Right.
What there's a couple of aspects of that the council is considering. So that edge means the park's edge would be fully improved to standard. So it wouldn't just be doing a city street. You'd have 3 entrances created, one at Good, one down near the South Saunders corner, and then the Dell Adams extension would come into the park. So although it's a full street section, the entire park edge would be built as a part of it to establish it. It really comes down to the language the council chooses to put in the parks bond. In a previous transportation bond, they've added Greenway language, which allows the council then to take transportation money and fund Greenway projects, which we've been the beneficiary of.
Okay,
and
fair.
I just clarity that the Conservancy is interested in supporting the road. However, but the Dix Leadership Committee, which Oscar is a part of, also has been asked to look at it, which includes the mayor, council member branch, the university. So there's a broader constituent, as well as council member Fort has stated her district is expecting an improvement because there's multiple developments coming on that road, and it's basically a 2-lane farm road. So.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you for that. All right, moving on. Also, one of the topics that was very important to the group was HVAC in our remaining gyms. And so at the March 16th City Council meeting, City Council approved a budget amendment in the amount of $950,000 to go ahead and start allowing us the opportunity to go ahead and work on the HVAC systems at Green Road and Method Community Center. So with that, we'll start working with engineering services to start doing some engineering and feasibility work, so we can go ahead and make sure we're getting the right system in those two centers. And reminder, we had already shifted on getting Tarboro done. So Tarboro, we're aiming again for a June timeframe for completion of that, and then Laurel Hills. Is going to be funded through a different annual CIP process. And so that project is going to be a much larger project than just HVAC. So we are working through a different funding mechanism to get that one taken care of. But for the most part, thank you for all your advocacy work. I think this is a huge thing. Council was very supportive of it. And without your advocacy, I don't think we would have been able to fast track them this fast with our, with the funding that was available to us at the time. So thank you all for that. And then lastly, just for a whimsical thing, I do see here that 2 things our RecTrack recreation management software went live on, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen Scott, March the 6th?
The 9th?
March 9th.
Yep.
Well, it went live one of those days, and so that is our new management software where people can register for programs, register themselves, and everything. And so so far it's been smooth sailing. So it was a huge lift on staff. They've been working for about a year on getting this program transitioned, and miraculously it was all done on virtually. So a big kudos to them. It was a heavy lift, and they really, knocked it out of the park. So I really have to hand it to our internal team that made this RMS transition very smooth and seamless. And it will be a much richer, better customer service experience for the community. And then lastly, apparently our historic Raleigh trolley went back into starting back up on Saturday, the March the 13th. So we're slowly but surely rolling back in, but getting back to normal business. And so we're very excited about that. And with that, that's the end of my report. I'll be happy to take any other questions you may have. Yes.
Marcia?
Thank you. I have a question about the status for Method Community Center. How's that going to be handled?
So method, we had already started the engineering work, and I believe we're about 50% done on that engineering work. So as soon as the engineering work is done and we know what the specs are needed, then we'll go ahead and start putting that out for bid.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Oscar?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. I'm really, really excited to hear that those community centers are going to get their air conditioning. I'm so excited for those neighborhoods and what it means for them and their experiences. Maybe you said it and I missed it because I got excited, but could you please say that, like, the time frame on when they're each going to get them? Like when each one can expect it to be like, okay, they're going to go in and feel that for their.
Well, other than really knowing for sure, that, I mean, definitely, you know, Tarboro, that we had already started that process, that
Yeah.
would be for the summer. Method being that it's 50% engineering completion. For Method and Green Road, I mean, we won't have those in place at all this summer. So, but definitely by next summer, they will be in place. Because there is a long lead time for the engineering work, the bidding, the contracting, and everything else. But so we are aiming for a spring 2022 completion on those two.
Okay, all right.
Not really?
There's no place on the agenda for what I'm going to mention, so I thought the director's report might be as good as any. And maybe it's partly Giovanni, but we have a work session schedule, cleanup day scheduled.
I was going to mention it in the chair report. Now I have nothing to say.
Yes, I almost made the same mistake, Beverly, but Giovanna put me in my place. So we're going to leave that up to Jennifer to announce later on.
That's fine. All right. Well, very good then. If there's no other questions for Oscar, then we can move on.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Parks Committee also didn't meet again. I think that they're looking for some things to review on that committee, and we had talked about sort of old master plans might be something that they could look into, but I'm not sure where that stands, and I don't think Chris is on the call tonight. Any updates, Oscar, Giovanna, Stephen, anyone on that? Fletcher Committee, Charlie.
Thank you to those that have volunteered to interview the award recipients. As of tonight's meeting, we're still looking for about 5 more volunteers to interview the award winners prior to this year's video and announcement. The idea is to help recreate the personal touch that the award celebration provides. So we'll be writing personalized thank you cards to the award winners, as well as including a quote from your interview to accompany the award announcement on the PRCR's website. If you're interested, I'll be resending out the available awards shortly after our meeting. And so please let Mary Owens or myself know if you'd be willing to interview one of the remaining award winners. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Greenways Committee, Beverly.
We met on the 8th of March, at Monday, and the majority of the meeting was discussing a new safety plan that the staff has developed, and will have lots of social media and things. It's not in, I think for most of us, especially when you think about the crime that was committed on the Greenway last year, that's not the focus of this safety. This is more about interaction of participants on a Greenway, passing safely on your left, speed limits. And so there'll be new signage that's related to that. But much more an alertness kind of campaign versus crime. Although we did have the staff sergeant from the Raleigh Police Department as part of it, and they are getting ready to revitalize their volunteers on the Greenway program, which has been sort of in abeyance because of COVID. And so that, and they are looking, and they even he intimated that we might hear something on the related to the crime, but no news there. But it'll be a social media, it'll be volunteers holding signs, and it should be kind of cool. So look forward to seeing that soon.
Stephen, did you want to add anything to that?
It'll come back to the board in May. So essentially the approach we took was status of safety, things we're working on, some ideas to resolve some safety issues. And then it'll be a short report from the committee to the board, because this was assigned to you from the council. So you'll have to report back to the council. So our goal is to bring you a short report in May. In April, we're going to review it with Beverly and the board and what's in that report. Did we miss anything?
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Sustainability, Wildlife and Urban Trees Committee, Marcia?
Yes, we met on Monday, late afternoon, and we had Kevin Boyer from the Stormwater Management Division talked with us about how stormwater and parks can collaborate for doing projects together. And Kevin's a very strong proponent for green stormwater infrastructure. And he talked about some various methods to deal with stormwater by planting trees to absorb, but trees that there's an infrastructure that is created to help hold the water as the trees grow, and healthy wetlands, some of the things that were talked about regarding Camp Durant. It was very informative, and there are lots of opportunities for the parks and stormwater to collaborate. And he said, as we all know, that there will be more rain issues and stormwater will be an ongoing issue for the city to deal with as part of climate change. And then Scott talked about his work that he's been doing with contacting other cities that are approved biophilic cities, and the kinds of suggestions, or they were very responsive, had some good information about what those cities have done. Richmond and Austin and what were the other ones, Scott? I'm blanking, right?
St. Louis, Arlington, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, so they sound very supportive and interested in Raleigh's investigating that, and it looks like there's already lots of things that the city of Raleigh's doing that makes us well positioned to pursue that, should that's what we decide to do. But that was very Carol's smiling, and maybe Christina too. She's got his bed. It was very uplifting to hear Scott's report. So anyway, so come join us. We meet the first with the third Monday, and there's good energy.
Yeah,
that's it, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry I missed it. I had to do kid pickup.
Yeah.
Great. Next we have we still have on the agenda the Neuse River Blueway plan, Lex, but now that that's been approved, I think we can take that off our agenda.
I agree. Oscar, covered it, and just appreciate council approving the plan.
Great, thank you. Devereaux Meadow Park, let's see. I think you guys were supposed to meet in March. Has that happened yet?
We'll meet on March 23rd. That is our first meeting.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
We're almost there.
Fantastic. And I can tell you from sitting in the city council retreat on Friday that city council is really into that. At least a lot of the members of city council are very supportive of that park, and that it will likely be in the bond.
Awesome. I know that
that's what I was hearing.
I know that just through the group that we have some email questions going around, and I'm excited to learn more on the 23rd. So awesome. Thank you so much.
Great. All right. Thank you. And Charlie, you have that on your calendar? Great. All right. Let's see, Carol, do we have a report for Arts Commission?
We actually do not, because the meeting, I was mistaken about when the meeting was, thank goodness. And the actual meeting of the Arts Commission is next Tuesday.
Okay.
So there's no report from the meeting that I thought was Monday because it did not meet then.
Well, very
So,
good.
So I will give a report at the following meeting.
Sounds good. Christina, any report for BPAC?
Yes, we met on Monday evening, and it focused on. I sent an email to you and Beverly and and Oscar about their questions, but it had to deal with the Capitol Boulevard North study and just what parks that access and about pedestrian paths that would not go along Capitol. So they were giving a presentation just showing how their plan is to not use that high use road for bicycle and pedestrian traffic. So it's not approved yet, but that's something that they're talking about, and I'm learning a lot from the Bicycle Commission. And that they didn't have any further questions other than which community centers were affected.
Yeah. Okay, great. And did you get my response to that?
The March tweet, yeah, and I was able to tell them that as well.
Okay, great. And I will just add that folks from BPAC have been very consistent about coming to the Greenway committee, which is wonderful, and they give really good feedback and input to that. Yeah. Dick's leadership committee did not meet this past month. So, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped Historic Cemeteries Commission. Sally, are you on the call or no? Okay. Or Ken, I saw you pop up. Were you?
I did, because I want to let you know I talked to Brian Johnson, who had to step off, and they did not have anything for this month.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dick's leadership committee did not meet this month. We'll be meeting
Tuesday morning.
Okay, I was going to say pretty soon. Okay, great. And Historic Resources and Museum Advisory Board, I did not make that meeting, but they sent me their notes. So I just highlighted a couple things. The Moore Square Market will be starting in May. And the, we had mentioned this before, I think Sally had mentioned it, but the Historic Resources Museum Advisory Board and the Historic Cemeteries Advisory Board did send a formal letter to City Council saying that they were against the merger of the two boards, but that they did look forward to supporting one another in their efforts. And then finally, I'm not sure if this happened, but Claire, who's the chair of the Historic Resources Museum Advisory Board, did reach out to me about this, saying that they were going to send a memo to City Council in support of our bond recommendations, and specifically for the tier 3 level, which was the highest level. So I don't know if any of the staff saw that memo, but she had reached out to me about that. Okay, so that's all I have for that. Chair report. So as Beverly mentioned, this weekend is our cleanup event at the Walnut Creek Wetland Center and the Greenway along through there. I'm not sure how many folks we have joining. I don't know if Oscar, if you know that number. Oscar will be there. Okay,
I think
yeah.
Giovanna may know. I'm not sure if she has a RSVP list or not.
Yeah, Giovanna, do you know how many people we have? Oh, I think you're counting.
No, hold on. I'm working off of 2 devices. Hold on. At last count, we were at 8, but we had some people that may not be able to join. But if you were not counted in that list and are able to join now, just let me know.
Great. Yeah, I think we can have between 10 and 15. They have supplies for that. And as far as social distancing, we can make that work. So I'm planning on being there. I hope to see a lot of you. I think it'll be a fun activity. Nice to get outside and see each other's full bodies instead of just heads. Okay, any questions about that? The information is in the agenda. Okay. That's all I've got. I don't have anything else. I think everything was covered elsewhere. So any other board members have any comments, anything you want to discuss? Open forum. Christina, I see your hand.
Jen, can I ask a quick question? This is Christina. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if this is even the right place to ask, but I'm scheduled for my vaccine on Saturday. I'm so excited. I am scheduled in Oxford because I couldn't find anything here in Raleigh. And so I looked on the state website for vaccine sites. And when I saw that what the state has offered, not inclusive of different churches and organizations that are also doing vaccine sites, I was a little taken aback because it's not evenly distributed in areas of high concentration. It just seems to be centered, and not that I understand that that's the state and we're the city. I get it, but I'm wondering that because I've joined this board, we're on this board, and we have all the parks, community centers, is there a way to partner with this city to host vaccine sites on the city level, because we have access to so much area within the city that is accessible to more people than currently is the state is available to do. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm asking the right questions or this is even the right thing.
Yeah, Christina, you definitely are. And as you know, a lot of our park sites were COVID vaccination test sites. I mean, COVID testing sites. And so we did work with the county on that. But Ken is currently working with HR department and also in conversation with Wake County and the state. And he can kind of give you all an update on where they're currently at with the possibility, like you mentioned.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so we are. So the county, as you know, is at there are two locations at the Commons and over on Sunnybrook Road. They're also doing the mass testing over the PNC Arena drive-through. So we've been in conversations about potentially either doing drive up or doing it at inside one of our community centers. What they're finding, Christina, is that when the announcement goes out, the need spikes, and then it kind of trickles off. So really what happens is they've got from the state and from the federal government an expectation to administer so many doses. So they're really trying to push it as well. But we're hopeful.
No judgment at all. I think everybody's trying their best to do it. But when I saw that, and again, no judgment, but when I saw that list, and I know that 27610 has a high positivity rate, and they have one state-sponsored vaccine site, whereas around me they've got like tons, you know. And I'm just wondering how we can assist, not how we judge, how can we assist them.
So we're in communication with the county about working directly with their providers, potentially host at our site. So that was the good part of setting up the testing, is we already have the agreement in place. It's just when the county, I was just in conversation with them Tuesday. That we can make that happen when they're ready to do it.
Okay, so they know that it's available, and it's really about them. Oh my God, thank you guys so much. That makes my mind feel so good.
Christina, when you say that, I appreciate you saying that, because that's an equity thing.
Yes. Exactly.
That ain't nothing new to that. I mean, that's nothing new. That's everywhere. That's in rural areas. That's all over the country. That areas like that are not getting served, and that goes back to privilege, whatever you want to call it. But that's an equity problem as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you, Ken, for letting me know, because I'm not trying to tell people how to do their jobs or that they're not doing. I just want to know that we're all in communication, and now knowing that we are makes me feel so good. So I appreciate your assistance.
Great, thank you for that, Christina. Anyone else have any comments or questions before we close? Okay, well, it was great seeing everyone. Great meeting. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Wonderful. I don't think we even need a second, do we? All right, have a great night, everyone.
Good night, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Night.